got my head out the sunroof. I'm blasting our favorite tunes. I only got one thing on my mind. You got me stuck on the thought of you. You're making me feel brand new. You're more than a sunshine in my eyes. I'm feeling like this might be my time to shine with you, with you, with you. I got my head out the sunroof. I'm blasting our favorite tunes.
Hi, welcome to In the Middle and Out of the Box, episode 27. Today we have a special guest, Amy Lang, and she is with the Boca Raton Citizens Pedestrian and Bikeway Advisory Board for the city of Boca Raton. So she is a perfect person to discuss with us all about what we can do to try to make our city a 15-minute city. And so we're going to first start. Welcome, by the way.
Thank you, Allie. I appreciate that. That's a long title for a board, isn't
Yes,
it?
it is.
I just call it the Bike and Ped Board.
Okay,
That's easy.
we'll stick with that, I think. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to try to, I think a lot of the problem is that a lot of people don't really understand a 15-minute city. And, Boca Raton is really ripe and really a great city to make a 15-minute city. It has a lot of things going for it. So I think what we'll do is we'll start out by just going through the definition of what a 15-minute city is. So a 15-minute city is an urban planning concept in which most daily necessities and services such as work, shopping, education, healthcare, and leisure can be easily reached within a 15-minute walk or bike ride from any point in the city. So this approach really aims to reduce car dependency, promote healthy and sustainable living, and improve well-being and quality of life for city dwellers. Implementing the 15-minute city concept, though, requires a multidisciplinary approach involving transportation planning, urban design, and policy making to create a well-designed public spaces, pedestrian-friendly streets, and mixed-use developments. So I think what happens a lot of times is that people think it's just one thing, oh, you're taking my cars away, and they don't understand it's a very complex process to make a city a 15-minute city. And I think you and I discussed this, that it has a lot to do with zoning, right? So you want to make sure that you have different types of places within a short walking distance. Right now, everybody is, this is single family, this is commercial, this is multi-use. And the whole idea is that anybody can walk out or bike or whatever and have a grocery store or an office or a medical office or doctor or whatever within 15 minutes of their city. So did you want to elaborate a little bit on that, about how it's just a multidisciplinary approach to a 15-minute city?
Yeah, I think it's ironic. It's how we built cities originally, right? I mean, when humans first started building cities, we naturally built everything we needed close to us,
Right.
so that we could walk out our doors and have access to everything. And then later on, we started creating these sort of arbitrary rules to regulate our cities, including zoning and those types of things, which then put all of the different aspects of our lives in different places, and
Therefore required us to get in a car, right?
therefore requiring us to get in a car and spending more time to get to everything that we do. But yeah, I think the 15-minute city concept is great. It's not about asking you to not ever get in the car. It's just making those things available to you as close as possible to your house, so you don't have to if you don't want to.
Right, and going to your point about how it originally was, I mean, even looking at, let's say, New York City, everybody used to live in the city, right? And then it came, well, the suburbs. Everybody moved out to the suburbs. And now everybody's moving back into the city again.
Right?
So the problem, though, is when they're moving back into the city, or the city is, becoming more popular to live in again, the districts or the zoning is not now what it used to be, right? So again, now you still have to get in a car, or you have to have some type of intra-city transportation. So I think it's really important. Down here we have a great opportunity because we do have a good downtown. We have Meisner, we have Palmetto Park and everything that's around there, to Royal Palm Plaza, to interconnect and make it a 15-minute city.
And we also have, I mean, I think one of the things that's nice about Boca, if you really look at the downtown and kind of radiate out from there, out to about 95, you've got a lot of neighborhoods there that are also close to, for example, Palmetto. I believe is it called Palmetto Park Plaza, with the Publix and all of that. So you've got some commercial stuff there,
Right.
but you've also got various schools right there, which really kind of brings it into sort of it makes it a complete community, really.
And there's several sections like that around Boca.
Mm-hmm.
One of the sections we're going to talk about even is Boca Chica. I mean, Boca Chica, is the same thing. We have a huge main thoroughfare down Boca Chica, and which is just kind of again perfect for multi modality as far as bikes, ped bikes, pedestrians, even intercity like freebies and things like that. And it's just kind of waiting to be developed. And it's like when I saw that and I sent you that picture, I was like, this is what I'm talking about. It's like there's so many opportunities.
And I think your point about the freebie is excellent too, because that could be sort of the extra little link that kind of brings that connectivity together, allowing different parts of the city to connect in a way that, so even if you're not able to get to everything walking or biking, you could still call the freebie, jump in the freebie, and easily, without having to take your car, get to other parts of the city.
Right. I mean, if the freebie service or service like the freebie was really efficient and there was a lot of it, enough for capacity to handle, and that you could just, use your app or get on the phone or whatever and call in within 5 minutes, it's at your door, I'm sure a lot of people would take the freebie instead of getting in their car, like if they wanted to go to the beach or if they wanted to go to Meisner Park, rather than getting in your car and having to find a parking space and paying for parking and everything else, if the service was available,
Mm-hmm.
And we're not talking about, buses and public transportation, because I know that has a very bad connotation for a lot of people. We're just talking about very light type of transportation. Just pop in,
Golf
pop out.
carty,
Right.
quiet.
Exactly.
And, I would much rather be dropped off at the beach than have to look for parking.
Yeah, and pay for parking, and there's never spots. And again, even Meisner Park, you want to go to dinner. And I know we had talked about too, I mentioned about the water taxi idea. And I mean, like, what a great idea, right? We have Wildflower now, we have Silver Palm. There's docks there, have a water taxi. Fort Lauderdale's doing this, and they're doing it very successfully. They have a huge route of their water taxi, and people get on, close by their home, and then they go to dinner or they want to go to a show or wherever they want to do, and they use the water taxi. And Del Rey has a dock, and Highland Beach, very accessible, could have a dock right there. And so why not, use all these, like, again, it's a very complex situation to make a 15-minute city. It's not just one, this, that, the other. It's, there's so many different facets to it. But I guess our point today is trying to get the city to move on some things, right? It's great to sit here, and you and I can sit here and talk for hours. But we want to start seeing some, movement, because this isn't something, as you know, right, that takes, is overnight. It takes years for this to be implemented. And I think I mentioned to you too about the emissions, right? What's it, Race to Zero, that they were talking about, as far as the city has to, I think it's by 2030 or 2035, be at, I think, 50%, and then I think 2050 be at zero emissions. And 70% of the emissions is from cars. So, 2030 is only, 7 years away, right? So, again, this is going to take time, and we need to start, going. I know a lot of it. Did you watch the strategic meeting, the 3-day?
I didn't get a chance to, no.
Okay. They talked a lot about it during the strategic meeting, about some of the ideas that we're talking about here, and about having hubs and intercity transportation and so forth. And but again, it takes time to get those things going, right? So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I definitely think these processes have to be incremental, partly because of cost, right?
Mhm.
I mean, anytime that you make infrastructure changes, it costs money. I think places that have really done this successfully have established a long-term vision, and then as they redid their roads, they changed them incrementally. So
Mhm.
each time, so for example, I believe Cambridge, Massachusetts passed a law that every street, when it was redone, would get a separated bike lane.
A protected by
a
them.
separate
Mhm.
protected bike lane. So if we established sort of guidelines for how we wanted our our system to be, because it really has to be a system,
Mm-hmm.
and then we did that incrementally as we were redoing roads and as we were making changes around the city, um, then I think we can achieve those goals. But if we don't have a larger vision
Mm-hmm.
for something that we really believe in, I mean, a big, hairy, audacious goal, we're never going to achieve this.
Right.
And I think that has to be really communicated and marketed too, because you know, I somebody had written to me once on Nextdoor and said that their neighborhood off of Military Trail, that they had tried there to create some sort of walkable community that would attract millennials, and they could live and there would be no parking, and they would use public transportation. And she said it didn't work. It was terrible. It's a failure, and that's what's going to happen in downtown Boca. And I said,
Okay.
well, first of all, if we look at Military Trail and downtown Boca, we're comparing apples to oranges here.
Right.
I mean, Military Trail doesn't have any aspect of urbanism existing, right? There's the blocks are really, really long. The streets are really, really wide. When you look at downtown Boca, we have shorter blocks, which are good for walkability.
Walkability, right.
We have some areas with some narrower streets, even though we do have some pretty wide streets that go through there. We have small businesses. We have a greater density of people living there. We have sort of some of the basic building blocks that you need to start out.
Right.
But people need to understand that there may be some challenges along the way, that it's not all going to be easy. Maybe we are reducing cars in one area, but maybe that does cause some congestion in another area. But the system is not complete yet.
Right. Right.
So, and it will take time. But people, in order for them to not get frustrated,
They want it now. They want it to complete it, and
they need to understand the
the
long-term
vision.
vision.
Absolutely. And I think I mentioned to you too that I know Del Rey was talking about this too, and they were talking about, well, how can we? Because they have so much congestion, like on Atlantic Avenue and down by the beach, similar to Boca. And their answer was, they had done a parking study and they took one piece out of it and said, well, they want to raise the rates on parking because they want the spaces to move, more
Mhm.
frequently and open up. And again, I can understand in theory that's a great idea. It's going to make people move and not be able to stay, or they're going to have to go into the garages or whatever. But if you don't have garages that are near, like the beach in Del Rey,
Mhm.
there's not a parking garage there. So even if you want the residents not to park, you have to provide something for them to either get to the garages or at intercity. They do have freebies up there, but they're not on a consistent basis, reliable basis. They're just here, one and there, whatever. So again, you would have to fully expand that. I mean, if you're going to start implementing that. So that's a good example of like taking something out of what you were talking about piecemeal, and it's a vision, and you have to, taking something out of a parking study and saying, okay, well, we're going to change this. We don't want you to park down there, but we're not going to provide you an alternate way of transportation to get
Right.
to the garage.
Mhm.
Another of the commissioners up there also said, well, we have so much parking. I mean, we have so much traffic and congestion. Why don't we just build another parking garage downtown closer to the beach? And it's like, that's the opposite of what you should be doing, because you're bringing more cars downtown.
You're going to just increase
Right.
traffic and congestion.
So again, I think it's more of a longer, like you said, a longer vision, having to see the whole complete vision, and there's going to be intricate parts. And one of the ways is, like you mentioned, about just starting, like even with the roads, like Cambridge did, or even it's kind of similar to like what just happened with the EVs in Boca, where now all the new buildings and developers have to have, I think it's 5% or 10% of the spots be EV compatible, and there was
Mhm.
several categories with that. And, they also talked about, well, what do we do about the grandfathered in buildings that are already existing? And, the focus was, yeah, let's get those to change over too. But there was a lot of pushback because, there's like, well, there's an expense to that. Well, yeah, there is going to be an expense to that. But if you don't make those also change over and you grandfather them in, those buildings are never going to have EV spots. So I think you're right. It has to be we has to be presented as a big vision, what ultimately it's going to look like, and then just do little parts of it, like we just talked about. When I was researching for today, I noticed that Miami actually is the number one 15-minute city in the country out of the 25 best cities for 15-minute cities, and Miami was number one. And their walkability score was really high. It was an 8. They have, several different communities that are connected and interlinked. They have their people mover, I think, down there. They're also doing a lot of things with walkability and bikeability and density. They're also transitioning all under the underpasses down there. They're making gardens, they're making community spaces. They're just trying to make it more of community oriented
Mhm.
and so I thought that was great. I mean, who would have thought Miami, right? But then if you really think about it, we've taken the Brightline. Have you taken Brightline
Mhm.
yet? Yeah. And you get off and you can walk wherever you want to walk, and it's all
Yeah,
connected, and you can go for a restaurant or whatever a museum, or if there's office buildings, or so
definitely.
yeah,
That downtown Miami area.
yeah, it's really helpful. So we talked about also, I know you're really into the biking and the walking as far as the pedestrians and Vision Zero, right? So that's one of the main things that Boca is pushing is Vision Zero. And so have you dug anything up on how far or how successful, or have they done anything with that yet as far as the roads and actually, color coding them and putting some protected bikeways and things like that?
So from what I understand, they're in the process right now of doing the studies that will lead to um, determining what they're going to do for Vision Zero. I mean, do you think the people watching are familiar with what Vision Zero is? Should I explain a little bit?
Well, we're going to be showing these
Okay.
pictures so they'll know when we're talking about
Okay.
it. Everything kind of has its place. This was the one from one of my other podcasts that I did. So basically, I know it's a New York City street, but it was really clear here, as you can see on the right, the original street, and then how it was actually color coded today. And so everybody has a place on the street, and it's for safety. So there's a bus lane, there's crosswalks, there's lane designations, there's pedestrian safety islands, there's parking protected and buffered bicycle lanes. So it's really to make sure that everyone knows where they're supposed to be, everyone knows where they're supposed to go, and so that it's a safer environment, right? So it's a national initiative. I know it's a county initiative with Palm Beach County, and I know a lot of the cities are trying to implement it. But this is really going to be also part of the 15-minute city. So it's a big component of it, actually.
Yeah, I think one of the cautionary note that I would make about Vision Zero is that Vision Zero is an international movement, and in Europe, it's actually been very, very successful. The United States, the cities that have adopted it have not been as successful, and I think part of that is that they really haven't been willing to make the necessary changes. So, for example, one of the big premises of Vision Zero is that cars need to be going slower because within the city limits, um, pedestrians are much more likely to survive any situation with a car if the cars are going 20 miles an hour or less.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for example, in Europe, in the majority of places that have taken on Vision Zero, they've established speed limits of 20 miles an hour or 30 kilometers per hour, which is 19 miles an hour in the city
Limits,
limits.
right.
And in order to do that, another part of it is that speed limits do very little to change the actual speed that people drive. It's more about the design of the street. And one
Mm-hmm.
of those things is narrowing the streets. So most of our driving lanes in Boca are 12 feet wide, which are the width of highway lanes. So it feels like a 55-mile-an-hour road.
Right.
Um, so I think my big concern is that maybe we have the potential for just giving lip service to Vision Zero, and especially when the county is talking about this, and yet the county roads that we have in Boca are designed for really high speeds.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something that I would really love to see there be accountability for, and that I would love to see more citizens getting involved in sort of these nuts and bolts of what we can do to actually make our streets safer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know on A1A, when I was vice mayor in Highland Beach, we had actually got FDOT to agree to do a whole streetscape. Are you familiar with streetscape? And we worked with the Treasury, the Treasure Coast um, agency up there, and they came down and did a beautiful streetscape. I mean, it was gorgeous. It had, I think it was 10-foot bike lanes on each side, beautiful. I think it was
Nice.
8 or 10-foot walkway, so people could walk like groups together and passing each other, not
Oh,
having to,
yeah. Yeah.
little tiny parks and. Just you could sit off together and just have a chat or, whatever. I mean, it was just really nice. And the town, they actually voted it down because then when they found out that they actually had to pay for it, through a referendum and through a bond issue. I mean, it wasn't free, right? So they didn't want to pay for it, it was really reasonable too. It was like $25 a month. It was just ridiculous because it included Highland Beach doesn't have a stormwater system, so we flood all the
Mm.
time. So it included a stormwater system. It included underground wires for FP&L. I mean, it was going to be beautiful. And, it's just really, again, I think it's just lack of vision that really, even though, you go up and you present and you talk. And it's kind of what I was talking about there with Vision Zero was interesting is that they were going to be putting these bike lanes and they were going to be using protected bike lanes, which was
Mhm.
really good. But then now the residents only want the minimum, which is 5 feet and so forth. So, you have to also work with, what you have as far as, a lot of the, especially in Boca too, I've seen it, the easements. People have taken over the easements, they've landscaped, they put their driveways down
Mhm.
through them and so forth. And so, at this point, it's been going on for so long to now come through and say, well, that 10 or 15 feet of the road is really not yours.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there has to be. But I mean, I think when safety is, important as far as Vision Zero is concerned, and it all kind of, I think it does loop together with the 15-minute city, walkability, pedestrian safety, just kind of knowing where to go on the road and how, but like you mentioned too, even if you have to put, what do they call them, they make the road quieter or something by putting them in further and making them more narrow and things like
Like
that.
the chickens.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's important. I know that Wellington is doing, Palm Beach County is going to be trying to do this light rail project, $850 million light rail that connects Wellington to downtown West Palm. Now, how great would that be, right? I mean, here's another situation where you have so many people out in the western part of the county, families especially, wanted the extra space or whatever, and that maybe work in West Palm, right, downtown, and just be able to take this light rail. I mean, this is another example. Brightline's an example, of a people mover. I think it's great. And what were your thoughts again? I know you said you took it. Did you like it?
Oh, I love it. I love trains. I mean, if I could just take the train, I would.
Well, also too, I thought you brought up a good point that, it's that extra last step, right? So even with the freebie, if you wanted to go to the beach, Brightline really came up with the idea of that last mile, right? As far as providing Ubers, right? So a lot of the times people didn't want to take the train because what happens when you get off the train? You're not anywhere near where you want to be. And so they came up with including the Uber or providing the Uber. And so it's kind of the same thing as far as, if the city had this intra-city transportation and was able to just bring you to somewhere, that you wanted to go
Yeah.
without having to get in the car.
I think that would be a really fantastic way to bridge from what we currently have as this automobile centristic way of
Mhm.
life to allowing us to transition our streets to something that is safer for people to get around biking and walking and in wheelchairs. But it would, so right now, I mean, ideally, you'd get out of the Brightline and you'd be able to, let's say you got in Miami and you went to the station and you're on your electric scooter, you got on the train, you got out, and you're an FAU student. You got out in Boca, you should be able to easily get on your scooter and get to FAU, right? That would be the ideal.
Right.
But right now, it's challenging to do that. But if we had that freebie system, while we're modifying our roads and making them safer for all these different modalities, it would really bridge that gap, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And even when all the, roads are done, it would still be another option, right?
Yeah.
So, again, for people maybe that can't, more older people or whatever, and would at least give them, I would definitely use it. I can tell you that, rather than having to circle around for parking.
I would use a variety of everything. I think that's the really fantastic thing about multimodality is that, like, I always love it when I'm in Europe and I get out of the airport and I open up my phone and I pull up Google Maps and I'm like, "Oh, I have, 6 different options for how I can get to my hotel." That's like
Right.
the best. It's such a feeling of freedom and empowerment.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And yeah, so we talked about, so let's just touch on Boca Chica real quick. So, I was even thinking about how can we get things moving in Boca, right? And I was thinking about what about just trying to do some pilot programs, right? Let's maybe do a couple pilot programs so people can see for themselves, maybe the benefits of something. So when I was driving down Boca Chica and I see this huge, massive, green space with a tree line in between, about how this space could be definitely used. They're putting all this money into the old Ocean Breeze golf course. They're going to be doing, a new golf course. They're going to be doing, swimming pools and pickleball courts and, something called the Hills and bike paths and walking paths and so dog parks and so forth, and all this money into it, and they really need to somehow beautify the street coming down Boca Chica. And then when I see that there's huge expansive green space, I mean, what better place to maybe do a pilot for the 15-minute city, right? As far as multimodality, have different, lanes protected. Like you mentioned too, that there's trees that are shaded, that you could shade part of it with. And I thought, what a great idea to maybe just do a pilot, see how it works. Have some hubs there for a freebie stations. For people to be able to just walk out of these condos and be able to go down to a freebie and go wherever they need to go. I mean, right?
Yeah, I think anytime you bring in that option, it's great to do. And you're speaking my language when you talk about pilot programs because I think that that's one thing that a lot of cities are doing is doing little test projects,
Mm-hmm.
and things that aren't that expensive, things that are maybe even temporary, and testing them out for 6 months and seeing how they go.
Yeah, I mean, they might have to be kind of, changed a little bit, but that's how you're going to know, right? So for the next community, maybe after Boca Chica is successful or not, or needs to be kind of changed a little bit, do a next pilot program and maybe put those changes into place or whatever. But as you get through each community, you're going to be getting better and better and better and building
Mm-hmm.
towards that ultimate vision. So I think it's really important, again, to start moving to get some of these pilot programs. I know the assessed values, for Boca this year. I mean, there's so much more tax space this year. There's money. There's things that can be done. So it's getting everybody on board and moving. And I don't know. Did you see that PNC meeting about Aledo?
I heard about it, I read about it, I was not able to
Okay.
attend.
So there was a real missed opportunity there. I know in the ordinances currently, there's something about the ride share has to be provided by these new developments. And one of the PNC board members mentioned, when looking at the designs, that they didn't see the ride share, the indentation to allow maybe 3 or 4 cars or whatever for ride share, or, a freebie system or whatever is going to be coming down the pike here. And, the city employee just said, oh, well, we don't really require them to do that. They just have to say they're going to provide, ride share. And I just thought, here was a missed opportunity where it's actually on the ordinances to provide this. And, really, I think it's just more of a systemic cultural change of mind that we have to try to switch on or something. Because what a great idea it would have been to be like, yeah, you need to redo your design. You have to put an indentation or maybe even
Yeah.
like a little hub there for transportation. And, it was a missed opportunity. So, I mean, I just think sometimes, everybody has to kind of understand the whole concept. And that's what we're trying to do today.
And other people in Boca have complained to me that when they've tried to ride their bikes around, for example, there's no parking for bicycles.
Like
And
bike racks and stuff.
there's
Yeah.
no bike racks. There's no place to put them. But we have so much parking.
Yeah. I know that we do get a lot of pushback on a 15-minute city, and I think a lot of it has to do with education. And so we're going to go through a bunch of questions and answers that you prepared, and we're going to go through them together and discuss them. And so why don't you take the first one?
All right. So a lot of people say when you talk about walkability or why the United States is not walkable or bikeable or rollable, a lot of people say, well, the United States is too large and too diverse to be walkable. And so when you think about this, here we are, we're talking about a community, we're talking about a small area, not the entire United States. And we're talking about local distances between home and daily activities, not moving from town to town. So in the United States, 30% of car trips are less than 1 mile, 40% are less than 2 miles, and 50% are 3 miles or shorter. Even if we took 30% of these car trips off the road, we would significantly improve quality of life, air pollution, noise pollution, and infrastructure costs because roads are really, really expensive
To maintain.
to
Yeah.
maintain. So, I think a lot of times we think we're driving all these really long trips and I need a car, but we're driving a lot of really short trips in town. And if you think about nowadays how common, for example, e-bikes are, I mean, you can easily do a 3-mile trip, definitely a 2-mile trip, and definitely a 1-mile trip on a bicycle. But even if it was difficult for you to do that, you could on an e-bike or an e-wheelchair. And there's just so many unique, interesting micro mobility vehicles now they have bicycles that are covered. So even if it's raining,
Right, right. For all different people, all different
for all
purposes.
different people,
right.
all different purposes, yeah.
Well, we talked about this too. It's interesting that you say that most of these cars are doing short trips. We talked about
Yes.
schools, right, the other
Yes.
day. And I know this was something that was brought up at one of the strategic days that they had the meeting, about how many people, right, less than 2 miles every morning and every afternoon are sitting there driving their kids to school in car line. The line is out the door and out into the road and causing traffic and emissions and everything else. And then the same thing is repeated back in the afternoon. And I think the one of the council members who brought this up said, it's so important to interconnect the neighborhoods, have safe walkways, have safe pedestrian bridges over roads so that the kids can walk to school or the kids, that are less than 2 miles because buses aren't provided and so forth. But if you just think about how many people and all the different schools in Boca have to get in their cars to do these short distances, it's amazing. And again, if we're talking about the race to zero for emissions, I mean, that to me would seem like that's a no-brainer, right? That would be probably the place to start as far as building these connectivity and building these safer pedestrian walkways. So,
I definitely agree with that. Before we moved here, my kids grew up in an area that was totally walkable and they got themselves around. And I think there's another piece of it that's really important is that children who grow up with that sort of independence, they are able, it gives them a certain feeling of pride and they really, studies show that they even do better in school. So I think it could actually benefit our public schools and make our schools better if our
Right.
children were getting to them under their own steam.
right.
So
And usually they walk, when they do walk, right, they're usually in this big, this big group anyway. So as far as for safety and things like that.
and they have fun.
Yes, yes. So that was the first question. Okay, so second question. European countries were developed before cars, and that's why they are walkable. U.S. cities were designed for the car. So what say you to that?
So there are some aspects of this that are true. Obviously, there are some very dense European cities that were designed before the car and haven't changed that much, in many, many, many years. But just like in the US, most European countries began making the automobile the focus of development after World War II. So they were tearing down buildings and widening roads and building new roads and filling up their little roads with cars. So you would see the old plazas and public parks full of cars as parking lots. If you see pictures from the 1970s of the European capitals, they were just full of cars. Now, in the US, we did start that process earlier than they did because, after Henry Ford, we started really filling our cities with cars in the 20s and the 30s. And in New York City, for example, we were just tearing down whole neighborhoods to put in highways, the Bronx Highway. We took out the park down Park Avenue. We took the stoops out of off the fronts of buildings to widen the streets. But most families here didn't have two cars until the 1980s. And in the 70s, a majority of children in the U.S. still walked or biked to school. So there's a picture of Addison Meisner Elementary here in Boca from the 1970s that I was given, and the yard is full of bikes. It looks like Amsterdam.
Aww.
So we did have that here. Now, if you look at pictures, like I said, from the Netherlands, for example, in the 70s, full of cars. But during that time period, a group of moms started protesting the cars, and there was a movement called Stop the Kindermoord. And they started blocking streets. They were moving furniture out into the streets. And the government responded by, instead of, tear gassing them or whatever, they actually responded by passing a law that the streets had to be designed for children first. So when they design a street, they think about how that street is for children. I just think that's so beautiful.
I do too. That's wonderful. Could you imagine if that was done here?
No, it would be incredible.
Yeah,
I just think we would be a standout in the entire country.
Right. I mean, why not be proactive, right? I always say this, instead of always being reactive, why not show some leadership, right? Be proactive. Be the first. Step out of the box. That's the whole point of this show, right? Is stepping out of the box. And so yeah, definitely.
So having a vision, and I think that would be a vision. If I were to say what would I want for our streets, I would say, okay, let's look at every street and let's say, would my 11-year-old feel good here? And would my 91-year-old grandma feel safe in a wheelchair here?
Right, exactly. That solves the issue right there. I mean, if you really thought about it. So the next one is Americans prefer to drive.
So statistically speaking, 50% of Americans would prefer to drive less and wish they had more options for transportation. Americans are also voting for walkability with their wallets. If you look at the price of housing and the demand for housing in walkable areas, it's way above the demand for areas that are not walkable. In fact, on average, there's a price premium of 35% for walkable areas. And if you analyze the price per square foot of the Golden Triangle in Boca and compare that to just across the other side of US 1 in Dixie, I'm guessing that you have a much higher multiplier than that 1.35. People really want and enjoy living in walkable areas.
Yeah, definitely. I think too, after the pandemic and how many people have moved down here, and it's just, it just seems like there's just so many cars, so many people. And I think that if the city really started changing and transitioning over, again, I think it would be like a very popular thing, I think, for most people, because not having to sit in that traffic and the accidents and being able to just, pick up a freebie or go to dinner or go to the beach or whatever, or take a water taxi up to Del Rey for dinner or whatever, I mean, that just sounds like such a nice lifestyle compared to what we have now with sitting in traffic and, searching for that spot, that covenant spot.
I agree. If the freebie had its own dedicated lane too, so like what I could see happening is if you had a small, narrow freebie that wasn't super fast, it could be the same mobility lane as the wheelchairs and the bikes and the scooters and even golf carts. People are super into golf carts. Why couldn't we use it for golf carts too?
Yeah, definitely.
And we make that lane be dedicated to them so that everybody who wants to sit in traffic can. On the other side.
We're just going to be passing you by.
We'll just be passing you by.
It's funny though, because, everyone's always saying, when I talk about this too, some people, and they're just, like, well, I want my car, I want my car. And I'm like, like you said, statistically, that's not really the average people. I mean, people really would like other forms of transportation. Again, especially in areas like ours where it's just getting so inundated by cars and people and population growth and, so.
And I think that there's another thing that's important to think about. When you go longer distances, yes, you want your car. And so nobody's trying to take that
Right.
away from you. We want you to be able to jump on 95 and
Go where you need to go.
go where you need to go. And I think, so I don't know if you've heard the concept of a stroad.
No.
So a stroad is a mixture of a street and a road. A road is supposed to be built to get you somewhere fast. Okay, like 95 or
right.
rural roads. You're going between cities. And a street is to build wealth. It's in a city, and it's where you have homes and businesses and schools, and it allows people to fulfill their economic role in society. And there's a lot of potential conflict points. There's people and movement and bikes and all kinds of things happening. But in the U.S., we created something called a stroad, which is the majority of the streets in Florida. It combines the purpose of a road and a city street in one place. So it's designed like a road, but it goes through a city. So think Palmetto Park, US 1, Dixie, all of these places. There's high conflict.
Right.
But there's cars moving fast at the same time. So you're trying to combine the two, and it doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, we do have a very high rate of accidents around this area. And
We do.
yeah. All right. So the next question. Oh, this is a big one. I hope you're ready for this one. It's too hot and it's too cold.
Yes. I mean, and sometimes it just is too hot and too cold.
Yes.
But, people that live in places that are designed well for moving about in other ways other than the automobile do get hot and they do get cold, and people still do it. If you look at, for example, the Scandinavian countries, people ride their bikes in the wintertime in the snow. I actually think Florida has a wonderful climate for getting around outside your vehicle, and particularly in areas where we have lots of trees and foliage, right? If you've ever walked down a street with complete canopy cover and felt the difference in temperature between that and a street with just, no vegetation or just a few palm trees, you'll know it's like a 15-degree difference in how much more comfortable you feel under those trees. So that's another design factor that we can really make things more comfortable for people.
Well, instead of, again, this is where it's, a very complex vision, right? So instead of continuing to plant palm trees, which don't add to the canopy or the heat or the coolness, why not increase the canopy, right?
Right.
So to provide cool. So I know Miami's really hot on that. They're doing, they have their first heat officer that they've made a position for. And they've also, I think they have goals of increasing their canopy, I think by 50% by a certain time. But they're putting in shade trees, right? So they're not putting in palm trees, right? So again, this is all going to be part of it, right? So it's not just, this 15-minute city and this and this and this, but it's also, what kind of shade trees are you putting in? What type of canopy are you increasing?
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the goals of Boca, is to increase their canopy, because I know most of the cities are. But, I mean, that's all part of it, though, right? So, and this is what we were talking about how it's so important for you and I to kind of get the word out there and just go out and, maybe make some presentations and talk to people and try to get them educated on what it is we're trying to explain to people as far as how intricate this is. But it's a huge effort, but you'll have to start somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
So, and as far as it being too hot, like you said, I mean, sometimes there is, yeah. So then maybe that's the day that you call up the freebie, or or
you
maybe
drive your car.
or you drive your car. That's fine.
The other thing I noticed when we were in the Netherlands last summer, and I don't know if you guys remember, but last summer was a really scorcher in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
It was extremely hot. It was just as hot as it was here. And we had rented e-bikes, and it was so refreshing to be on the e-bike because we were zooming around town, and it was like
The wind blowing in your face.
nice
Yeah,
breeze.
yeah.
So it was the only time I was actually comfortable was when we were on the bikes.
Yeah.
And there was no air conditioning, in a lot of the places over there. So so getting out on the bike was
Was a refreshing treat, right? All right. So the next one is I don't want to walk or bike. I want to drive.
And that is your right. So, yeah, I mean, if you want that and that is perfectly within your right, and if that's what makes you comfortable and that's what you want to do, no one is trying to eliminate cars completely. What I'm saying is that we should design for all people and focus on people first, especially children and those that can't drive. If we take some cars off the road, it will only serve to make driving better for those that want to drive or need to drive. Think about this. And we talked a little bit about the kids
Right.
walking or biking to school. And I think it's one of the lowest hanging fruit for getting people off the street,
Right. I
cars
mean,
off the street. Because what I've noticed in Boca is that the biggest times of congestion are in the morning
mhm,
at school drop off and in the afternoon at school pickup.
mhm.
And I'm guessing there's probably around 10,000 kids in Boca. And that's, somebody please correct me. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that there are. And each kid is driven to and from and to school, and then the parents have to go home or to work or whatever. And then after school, someone picks them up and drives them home. So that's 4 trips for each kid every
Right.
day. That's like 40,000 trips. So,
And they're less than 2 miles usually.
and usually they're less than 2 miles. So I just think that that's a really easy win if we create streets that link the neighborhoods to the schools that are safe.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's very simple things. I mean, I think people need to think more about how our roads impact how you feel when you're on them as a pedestrian or as a cyclist. For example, something very simple is corner radius of a street. Our streets are designed with this corner radius that creates a racetrack. So the car doesn't have to stop at all and can maintain its speed as it goes around a corner. That's very dangerous for pedestrians.
Right.
It's a very simple thing to change the corner radius of the street so that it is more like this, so that cars have to slow down and see people before they go around
Before they turn.
before
right.
they turn.
Right.
So it's design things like that we can easily change.
Yeah. But again, it involves, changing almost every department, in the city, their thinking, their culture, the designs, the infrastructure. And again, I know it might seem overwhelming, but I mean, you have to start somewhere. So, again, low hanging fruit, we talked about the kids would probably be a really good place to start with the 2 mile and less school. And, even doing some pilot programs. There's a way to kind of put your toe in the pool and just start, just getting going. And I think it's just like, I think there's just so much confusion out there that people just are just afraid to even, some on the council, they're just afraid to really kind of step into it. One of the council people have said, and the mayor, well, we don't really have control over, the people in West Boca that are coming east to go downtown and so forth. And and unfortunately that's not city, that's county, right? So we're obviously not going to put gates and fences there. We're not talking about that at all. But what we need to do is figure out a smarter way to handle that, right? Instead of just saying there's nothing we can do, maybe what we can say is, at 95 or whatever, that there's going to be transportation hubs there, and at those transportation hubs is where you'd be able to pick up either a freebie or some other type of transportation, a light rail, whatever, like Wellington's doing, but to come up with a solution, right? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that that's a great idea. That's actually one of the problems with having so much excess parking downtown is that is an invitation to drive to downtown, right? So, I mean, I've lived in many places where I would either take an Uber to downtown because I didn't want to look for parking, or I would walk, or I would take an Uber to several blocks away and walk to downtown. So I think having that option is a great way so that people can park their car in an easy place. They get in the transportation, they get dropped off downtown
Or at the beach or
or
wherever,
at the beach
right?
or wherever. They don't have to worry about parking. We don't have to worry about providing as much parking. But then I think the other aspect of it is our main goal as a city is not to provide a through fare for people to drive through it.
Right.
Our main goal as a city is to create a place for people to be,
To a community.
a
Yes.
community. So we're not here to build roads for people to drive through. That's
Yeah, and there's a substantial population out in West Boca. I mean, obviously the home prices are a little less. There's a lot of families out there, and again, it's not that they're not obviously welcome to come to Boca, of course, downtown, wherever, but we don't need all the cars, right? So
exactly.
that's only exacerbating the problem. Excuse me. That's only exacerbating the problem. So again, instead of just saying, well, there's nothing we can do, let's come up with some solutions. And like I said, just out of the box kind of thinking real quick, I just thought of, hey, let's just have a place, a hub, a transportation hub right there along that whole kind of line of the city line there, and just provide transportation, however kind it is. To the people that are coming into the city. I know that, like, over in Italy, when my husband and I were in Italy, there's the older towns and so forth, and they don't allow cars to go into some of those more, older medieval towns and so forth because they just actually can't fit the cars, right, on the roads and so forth.
Yeah.
And so they have the same thing where they have a place where you have to stop with the car
Mhm.
and you have to either get out or you can walk, or they provide transportation or, whatever to get into the heart of the city or the piazza or whatever.
Absolutely.
So why is that so hard here?
I don't know, and they're actually really expanding that all over Europe. So now it's not even just those little
Older cities,
older
yeah.
cities. They're creating large pedestrian zones or limited car zones. So you can enter if you're with your car, if you're a resident and you have a sticker, or if you're police or an ambulance,
Right, of course. Yeah.
or the public transportation. So those vehicles can enter the city, but you can't just
drive into it.
because they really realize that cars make places uncomfortable for people,
Right. And the city should be comfortable.
and the city should be comfortable.
I mean, especially because Boca has put so much effort into creating a downtown and creating the spine and creating the walkability and connecting, the Palmetto and the Meisner and the Royal Palm Plaza. And, just think about how great it would be if, there was just less cars, or some of those roads maybe were close to cars, or even just, for residents or whatever. Just because, again, these are just all out of the box ideas, but again, it's making it a community. And I know it's very successful in other places. And the fact that, even Miami is the number one 15-minute city in the country right now, we have some competition there. We've got to step
Right.
it up a little bit. I mean, if you really think about what Boca and Del Rey are doing, is not really much right now. So, we really need to kind of step it up and start going. And it's just going to take a lot of effort and time.
Mhm.
And, again, there's other things that come into that, zoning and everything else. And I think that's really important too, like in the definition that I put, that it's so important to have political will. You have to have people. And I think there's a lot on the council right now that do have that. I think at least 3 or 4 that are actually really, really would interested in doing something like this or getting started.
Right.
It's funny. I have this last one where, one of the ones that says, I don't want to walk or bike, I want to drive. I've heard from people that, it's just incredible, the conspiracy theories out there. I don't know if you've heard from the same, they're trapping me in. I'm not going to be able to leave my city. It's going to be all, fenced in. It's going to be, I just don't even know where this is coming from. And this, I think it's just from lack of knowledge, and people are fearful of change, and we know that. Change is good usually, right? And, you have to adapt. Things are changing, so it takes adaptation. I think that was it on the questions. So what would you like us to do? Like, I know, we talked about joining together and trying to educate people, and maybe doing some presentations and talking to people, meeting with maybe the council members
Mhm.
together, and, trying to get the ball rolling on this. Even just, the freebie system. I think that's another low-hanging fruit.
Mhm.
It's great to say, well, we don't have money in the budget, but you know what? You can find money in the budget, especially with the higher assessed valuations right now and so forth of real estate properties. Just having a really good system in place that is going to be efficient and viable for people to want to use it.
Mhm.
Then you go for the water taxi, and that's going to be obviously a really big help, I think, especially in the evenings, for people going to up there or coming down here for
Mhm.
dinner or whatever. But again, you start with the low and just keep moving forward. Um, what other ideas and thoughts do you have as far as how we can get this going?
Well, I think we really need to have that big vision out there and get people on board with that. Like how can we really convince people that their lives can be improved through some of these changes?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think, like these movements in Europe were all kind of citizens who kind of banded together and then demanded the
The
change,
change, yeah.
right? So I
Well,
mean,
well, even the fact that Miami is the number one considered 15-minute city right now is just amazing to me. That it's so close by.
yeah,
And, so I mean, if they can do it, I mean, somebody, the size of Boca or Del Rey or whoever
yeah,
absolutely can do it. I
yeah.
mean,
I'd like to try and, get people together, kind of communicating about these ideas and really educating people about what the potential is for Boca.
hmm
Um, and build some kind of group that would really hold our city accountable for making these changes.
yeah, especially like we talked about some of the simple things we could start with,
Yeah,
pilot programs, low hanging fruit. And I think, once that started rolling and you started seeing positive effects from those changes,
totally.
it would just start going. I mean, it's kind of like the EV,
Hmm.
the electric vehicles and how people resisted for so long. And, now it's coming into our, building requirements and our, the car, they're expecting it to have taken off much more than they even anticipated,
Hmm.
as far as the number. Now all the big car dealerships or car not dealerships car manufacturers are all changing over to EV totally by I think it's 2030 or 2035. I mean, Ford just signed with Tesla to use their charging stations now, so there's a cooperative there. And so again, I think it's just kind of similar to that. It starts out kind of slow, everybody's kind of like seeing what's going on, and so we just got to just keep pushing on it. So
Yeah, I
but
think that definitely the opportunity is there and it's ripe for the taking.
yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. So I guess we'll end it there. And we're good for today. We're going to keep moving with this. And it was so nice to have you here today. And I think we covered a lot of territory. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about or?
Allie, thank you so much for having me. I guess the other thing I would like to mention is that I have three kids that are teenagers, and what I really see with the younger generation is that they want these changes, and they're in the future. I think that they're the generation that's probably really going to take this and really run with it.
Right.
Um, so I'm really excited to see what they're gonna do as well. But they're on board with all of this walkability and the environment and they're really trying to make change.
Yeah, I mean, and if we can make at least the start of the inroads for them,
Yep.
because there's so many decisions being made now, about roads and this and that. And so, I mean, if we can just start it
Yeah.
and, they can just
They
take
can
it,
take it and run with
run
it.
with it. Exactly. Let them run with it. Well, thank you again for coming. It was a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Allie.
All right.
Wonderful talking to you.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that interview. It was fantastic. A lot of great stuff discussed. I hope you guys have learned a little bit more about what the 15-minute city is and realize it's not this, horrible thing that we can't do and touch and whatever. So hopefully you're a little bit more open to it, at least learning about it, and maybe doing some things to start it. So what we're going to do, since the interview was a little long today, is I'm just going to do a few little science technologies and a couple arts, and then we'll do the rest next week. So I just want to start off by talking about the new corporation that is doing a driving on the road. I know that in Europe they had done this as a pilot, but it's actually going to be coming into production in as little as 2 to 3 years. One of the things that people that are concerned about that have EVs is always thinking that they're going to run out of, a charge, right? So this kind of takes that away. It's in the road, you're charging as you're driving, in addition to maybe having a home charger or whatever. But so this is a great new thing that just came up. And then the next thing I wanted to talk about was something that's really eco friendly. Everybody always wants boxes to move, right? So this new fad, trend, whatever you want to call it, is these companies that just drop off these kind of plastic crates that have flip lids, and that's what you use for your moving boxes. So it's eco-friendly. It's the new trend. There's lots of companies jumping onto this, and you have the option of either returning them when you're done, or if you decide you want to keep them, if you have things in them that you're going to store for a while, whatever, then they just charge you for the box or whatever it is. So I just wanted to show that. And I'm going to go into art. So, real quick, there's a couple photos this week that just were really kind of cute and funny. And so, this is actually a deep sea tube worm that are in those, deep caverns coming up with the thermal, volcanic, whatever. So, they actually took an electronic microscope and say, what do these things really look like up close? And I think this is hysterical. I mean, the whole face, the mouth, the eyes, it's just adorable. Um, this picture is beautiful. Again, I have people that love rose-colored spoonbill birds. This is flamingos, just absolutely stunning with the sky there and the reflection. And then one of the last pictures there's two pictures left that I want to talk about. This is where art meets fashion, right? So this dress is just like a volcanic eruption. And it was so funny because after seeing this dress, then I saved it for the presentation. Right after that, I got this beautiful, stunning art meets architecture, right? I mean, the carving on this banister is just exquisite, and the craftsmanship. So I wanted to share that with you. And so I hope these little snippets, I have a lot more, so we'll put them on for next week. But I hope you enjoyed the show today. I hope it was informative. And I'm going to leave you with my two pictures like I always do. And we'll see you next week. Have a great week.